Hi, my name is Haley Holmes, and I produced the opening scene of a new psychological horror film called The Double Life. I produced this opening because the psychological horror subgenre is fascinating and on the rise in modern day films. The overall inspiration for my scene were films including American Psycho, Carrie, and the film Psycho. These were my main inspirations because they show a presentable and normal main character that is also a murderer. Carrie was a major inspiration for my scene because the main character is a teenage female who ends up becoming a murderer in the end. This inspired my opening because the main character in my production is a female teenager who at the very end of the opening displays a body without context. Now answering a few questions for the main
Tell me about
actress,
yourself and the role
Madison.
that you played in this opening sequence.
Hi, my name is Madison Balestrero. I'm 16 years old and I played the killer in Haley's film.
Question 2. How did you feel about portraying the antagonist within this film?
I felt that it was easy because it's just like a normal morning routine, and the major thing my character did was just smile at the dead body in the tub, and I felt that the camera angles helped achieve a creepy smile.
Question 3. What was your favorite part about the film?
I liked how everything seemed normal at first. It was just a girl getting ready in the morning, and then there was a dead body in her tub. The audience would have never suspected anything from her until the last few seconds.
Question 4. What do you enjoy most about the psychological horror subgenre?
I like psychological horror because it messes with your mind. Most of the movies from the subgenre are like twisted and disturbing. I don't know how people think of these ideas and create them, like movies like Smile, Don't Worry Darling, and American Psycho.
My opening scene uses and challenges the conventions of psychological horror films. My scene uses the conventions through the costuming element of my scene. The typical costume for an antagonist is dark clothing, while the victim is usually dressed in lighter clothes to show their innocence. I followed this convention to subtly display who was good and who was bad within my film, without the audience being aware of this. This is highly intentional because after viewing, the audience will hopefully realize the subtle hints throughout my opening sequence. My film challenges the conventions of a psychological horror film because the main actor is a female. This challenges the conventions because most villains in psychological horror films are male. For example, American Psycho and The Shining. This sets my opening apart from other psychological horror films in a major way. Since my main character is a female instead of a male, the audience would not expect her to be a killer considering the gender standards in the film industry. My opening scene presents social groups and issues by having the entire cast be female. Many Hollywood films show gender inequality when it comes to women in film. My opening scene just the opposite and gives the female the leading role, which is uncommon in this genre. This is major currently when it comes to female inequality in Hollywood. The scene engages the audience through the variety of camera angles and shots used. The several types of angles and shots create a numerous amount of emotions and suspenseful environment surrounding the actors. This is meant to draw in the audience while watching to get their full attention. In my scene, I used close-ups to create a sense of intimacy between the audience and my main character. The close-ups of my main character are of her simply getting ready for school, which helps the audience feel connected and as if it's just a normal teenage girl getting ready. The deception within my film, due to the angles and shots, help build up to the final reveal at the end of my opening scene. My opening scene also utilizes multiple types of sound to attract the audience's attention to intricate details that they would not normally recognize. While watching my opening scene, the audience can hear sound effects of natural objects and motions that they would not normally pay any attention to. An example of this is the accentuation of doors creaking when opened and turning on of the sink in my film. I use no dialogue when filming to build suspense and to focus on the building of background sound. After researching the multiple different production companies, I decided that Blumhouse Productions would be the best fit considering my overall plot and genre. my production, The Double Life, would be distributed through the company Blumhouse Productions due to the movies distributed by them such as Ma and Us, which are both successful psychological horror films. I feel as if Blumhouse Productions would help distribute my film successfully, considering the variety of popular psychological horror films produced and distributed by them. If I were to market or exhibit my film, I would produce an official trailer to get recognition for my film, as well as starting a social media account for updates and to gain fans. I would stick with a small release due to it being a small-scale production, as well as starting out at small film festivals to see if it would be successful to be released worldwide or theatrically. The scenes while filming my production had a variety of different shots. For example, the main character grabbing the hairbrush. This was accidental during the practice of this shot, but I later then realized that it was a great transition into the next shot. The panning of the hairbrush was one of my favorite shots when filming because it glided so smoothly with not only the actor's movements but the camera as well. The skill that I developed going through this project was learning how to edit and compose a film together. Before filming, I was completely unaware of all the editing techniques and varieties of software to do so. When I began to edit in the post-production stage, I tried out multiple apps, including iMovie and VN. I overall decided that VN was the easiest to navigate and understand from a beginner's point of view. VN editing allowed me to edit the shots, audio, and overall look of the scene at the same time, which was useful because it helped me get an idea of what the final product would look like when completed. When editing with iMovie, I had to edit the audio in a different app, which was extremely complicated. I advanced in my editing skills throughout my opening scene in post-production by practicing.
The
with
biggest
several
problem
different
throughout my
types
project
of
was having to
transitions and
change the
cuts
cast in
throughout
the
my
middle of the
final
filming process.
production.
There had to be an immediate change in cast due to the vastly different schedules which would have not worked with the deadline of this project. The change in cast shifted the emotional element of my scene since I had to use my main actor's younger sister as the dead victim. This may have a larger impact on the audience rather than having another teen play the dead body, since the new actor is much younger. I had no experience with filming or editing, which was terrifying considering the substantial number of shots and camera angles to be learned to film my final opening scene. Before filming, I began practicing to try and perfect different camera angles and shots to prevent shakiness within my final project. Throughout the duration of my project, I have become more confident and comfortable filming and can recognize which shots are good and what are not. Another skill I have learned through this project is how to tell which angles and shots to use to get the correct emotion. An example of this is in the scene when the girl is looking down at the camera smiling. This shot is a low angle shot which puts the character in the frame in a superior position. But it is also from the point of view from the victim in the bathtub. My final scene was filmed on an iPhone, which made it easier for me to control when trying to get specific close-ups of my actors, as well as the mirror shots in my opening scene. The skill that I developed going through this project was learning how to edit and compose a film together. Before filming, I was completely unaware of all the editing techniques and varieties of software to do so. When I began to edit in the post-production stage, I tried out multiple apps, including iMovie and VN. I overall decided that VN was the easiest to navigate and understand from a beginner's point of view. VN editing allowed me to edit the shots, audio, and overall look of the scene at the same time, which was useful because it helped me get an idea of what the final product would look like when completed. When editing with iMovie, I had to edit the audio in a different app, which was extremely complicated. I advanced in my editing skills throughout my opening scene in post-production by practicing with several different types of transitions and cuts throughout my final production. I used modern technology throughout my project. In the beginning of my project, I used a computer to research the conventions of the psychological horror subgenre and how to successfully work towards creating the plotline. I also used technology to create my blogs to track my progress throughout the duration of my project. This was beneficial because I was able to know exactly what was accomplished and what needed to be finished throughout the 9 weeks of working. In my opening scene, I used modern technologies to film and edit my opening scene.
While filming, I used my iPhone to get intimate shots of my characters because it was much easier to navigate than an actual camera within my setting. During my scene's production, using an iPhone was my only strong, reliable option that would produce clear and strong results, which worked out and created a project that captures a story. During the post-production stages, I used my iPhone and computer to combine my shots together and add sound to create the result. I used the VN Editor app to combine my final scene together to create my final opening scene. I used my computer to research different editing techniques for films, such as jump cuts and dissolves, which are frequently used within my film. My final production was an opening for the film called The Double Life. The summary of this film is a teenage girl begins to get ready for school while she's living a double life. The other life of hers consists of being a serial killer. My scene uses multiple types of cinematography, specifically the low-angle shot created a prominent level of emotion because it put the antagonist in a superior or powerful position in the frame. This was my overall aim when it came to filming at the ending of my opening scene, which created a large amount of tension and suspense, as well as to display the antagonist in a powerful position over the victim. My production utilized numerous sound techniques when it came to the post-production stages of editing. My opening scene included sound effects, on-screen sound, and background music to enhance the emotions of my film. For example, when the girl turns on the sink, that uses natural sound because the audience can both see and hear the sink in the scene. The use of multiple variations of sound helps add depth to my opening scene. The overall look of my scene was very dark, dull, and faded, which was highly intentional when it came to editing. This was beneficial to my production because it brought an unsettling feeling to the audience while watching. The dark tone of my film also correlates with the antagonist's costume, since she is dressed in all dark clothing. To achieve the dark faded look, I used various filters and lowered the saturation on the VN editing app. I believe that the dark look added to the tension surrounding my main character, which was the aim and the plot. Although I am incredibly happy with the way my final scene turned out, if there was one thing I could redo or fix, it would be the lighting. What I mean by this is that the lighting in some shots is either too dark or too bright, which makes the camera not completely focus on what is in the frame. Even though the final product is well composed, I would have fixed the lighting in one or two shots.